Hello, and thanks for joining us on the podcast that discusses all things gaming. Coming to you from the home of Gen Con and the gaming capital of the world, this is The Established Facts.
Hello, everybody, and I'd like to welcome you to The Established Facts. We are in for an interesting show this evening, I'm sure. I'm going to let the panel introduce themselves, starting with my left.
This is Big Don.
This is Dr. Deb.
This is Katie.
And it's Josh.
And as always, I am the host, and we are going to discuss starting games over or finishing them and facing consequences.
I hate this game. Flip the table.
So, the way this is going to work is the panel is going to go around in a circle that you can see or can't see.
Imagine a circle.
And we're all sitting in it. Anyway, they're going to go around and they're going to tell you their opinion on whether they would like to restart games or just end and face consequences, and then we'll come back and just kind of discuss about this. Donald.
I would have to say... Oh, man, that's a hard one. I'm going to say restart.
End and face consequences.
I'm going to have to go with restart.
Video games, restart. Role-playing games, end.
You know what happens to fence sitters, Joshy?
You get to convince me. That's what happens.
I don't get to... No, I get to smite you.
I was trying to eliminate the smiting.
No,
Well,
that's my job.
it's worth a shot.
I am an avid restarter. I will restart everything until I get it exactly the way I want it. So, Donald,
Yes.
convince Josh.
That was creepy. All right, so... Trying to find my platform.
That's pretty
here.
good.
Yeah, you know. I would have to say my biggest reasoning for a restart versus a new start or a whole new game definitely hinges on the fact that for myself, I put a lot of work and a lot of depth into a character. Even a one-shot character, I definitely overthink. And I feel like if you are going to take the time, especially if you don't have something like Hero Lab, if you have hardback books and you sit down with your gaming group and you all develop a group template and you build your characters from the ground up, and it takes you 2 to 3 hours to do so and to make sure that the chemistry of the party is going to work and that the personalities of each class are going to work together well, that a simple restart, if things start to get out of hand, or if things are just not going the way that you want, is a lot easier solution than having your players start back at 1 and work themselves way back up to the top of wherever they ended. Now, I understand that there is definitely a place for new games, such as I am starting to run a new game. Actually, I believe the Saturday after this episode will release. But in a situation like that, I think it's different because you're starting a brand new game. You're starting with new players. You're starting with a whole new scenario. But I think that if you are going to weigh your options between just throwing out the game that you have taken the time to lay out and to plan versus just taking those characters and kind of cleaning it up, then, you know, it's definitely, I think, in the player's best interest to just do a simple restart instead of kind of throwing everything away and starting it back over. So,
well, I agree naturally. like I said, I like to restart things until I get them exactly the way I want them. I look at you, Josh, because you know exactly where I'm going. Like, even when I play like Madden or any type of video game, if I start out and in the first quarter I throw 2 interceptions, oh no, this is not happening. My quarterback does not have 2 interceptions. We will be restarting this game over. And I guess that's that kind of bleeds over into my role playing mentality. With I'm like you, and I invest all this time in characters, and I really, really despise putting them to rest, because I know that's an investment that I'm more than likely never going to reopen or rehash or use them again. And so that's it's kind of like a somber moment in gaming. Deborah, you look perplexed.
I guess I'm a little confused on the this doom and gloom of, if the game is ended, apparently everyone dies in an enormous explosion?
Not necessarily.
Okay, because you all are basically talking about how ending a game means that the character faces eternity.
Have you never like read a good book and then sad that the book was over when you were done?
Absolutely, but unless it said at the end of the book the character is now dead and in the ground, in my mind that doesn't mean the character's story is really over. It just means the book is over. The character can continue living on in your own mind, in another book, in fan blogs, and fanfic, and good lord, Twilight, smoke. So if you end a game, that doesn't mean the character is ended. That just means that particular adventure that was maybe going badly has ended, and now we start another one. So I'm not really sure that all that time is lost, or you put that character into another campaign, which I've done several times. I think I'm getting up to 3 campaigns with one particular character that I've had, and technically I could have argued each one, oh, it's over. Well, no, not in my mind. She's going to keep coming back until I'm done telling her story. So I don't think it's the end of the world if a campaign ends.
Well, you have to take into consideration that the game master that you're playing under and the game master that we play under or played under, their stories are completely different. Where the game master that you play under has a nice, intricate way of looping the fact that your character could be bajillion years old, and we'll get to that. But the character is bajillions of years old, and you can still be no matter in any part of the timeline that you want to be in, and it's just there's a place for that. In the game, with the gaming group that we played, that we were referencing, putting characters to rest and feeling like you don't play them anymore. As well as I do, that was a 5-year investment in a character, and when you go from playing, 2 and 3 times a week, which is a ton, to now we play on holidays, which maybe yeah. So I mean, yeah, you're right. The character technically still is alive. I mean, but there's no manifestation of playing that character in a game until the holidays or whenever we decide to do it at Gen Con or whatever. So that that's a good significant period where the story of that character is either put on hold or at rest or whatever. When you're used to developing that character 2 and 3 times a week. So it's just kind of a change of like a gear shifting of where you're going with the campaign.
Well, I think I kind of see where Deb was going on this.
Of course you do. You're married to her.
I know. But that's why I said that it's 2 different approaches, in my opinion. When it comes to video games, most, mind you, because, I mean, stuff like Oblivion and Fallout don't necessarily follow this path unless you're specifically staying on the story arc. But most video games have a defined path that you follow this path, and yes, there's a bunch of little things you can do, like collecting treasures or collecting trophies and achievements and whatever. Or when it comes to stuff like sports games, you want to be the dominating force, and when you're not dominating, I'm the same type. I'll restart and just completely start over, and let's try that again, because I screwed up. Because with a video game, it's a real easy thing to do. You're still the same person, no issues, you are back. It's basically going back one step versus going back to the very beginning. And with a role-playing game, I would prefer that a story arc ends if I've done something stupid, such as the battle we talked about a couple of different times where, we had the group was on the complete other side of the river. We couldn't deal with them. I was trying to do something stupid with a goblin and fire off a cannon and it just didn't work. I didn't want to restart that battle. You know what? I just would rather deal with it because the story's going to continue and there's stuff that can continue on after that. Pausing a game that's long-standing to play later, I'm better with than taking, okay, we're going to play the same game again with the same characters but start over. I don't want to start over. I already invested enough time in it. We either start with this character at where they're at, or I would rather start a whole new game completely. When it comes to role-playing games, I'd rather have a whole new story arc than try and bring the same character in and start over with them when I've already invested so much time into it from a role-playing perspective. In video games, it's different. You have a mechanism to roll back a step or two rather than roll back all the way to the beginning.
So, Katie, we've heard from everybody but you, so what do you think?
All right, well, being obviously the newest role player here and having only done that about twice, I actually talked with Dawn and Deb about it, and I'm going to have to say that I'm going to stick with my view on restarting when it comes to role-playing because I personally wouldn't want to have to create an entire new character either. Like, I know there are some places where you're like, well, I just want to, keep going with it or whatever, but after investing time and, obviously emotion, depending on how long you're with the character, into a character, I'm not going to want to just be like, well, just throw them out the window and pick a new one and, completely re-roll. With video games, also, it's the same way. I'm going to have to agree with Josh. It's so easy to just be like, well, I don't like that, so whatever, go back. I actually used to get yelled at because my mother could hear me constantly resetting my video games. It's like, no, that's not right. I'm going to redo that challenge over and over and over again.
Pulling the cartridge in the Nintendo.
Yeah. Caitlin! I was like, sorry, Mom, just shut my door. But yeah, no, I'm an avid perfectionist when it comes to gaming, especially video gaming. So if I don't like it, I'll be like, nope, not redoing that one.
I think, for myself, the only game that I can think of that I restart more than just about anything is Angry Birds.
I think everyone does.
I can tell by the first bird's flight. I'm like, no, pause, restart. No, pause, restart.
Have any of you guys played
I don't have
Peggle?
any eagles yet, so
Yes.
I got.
Peggle.
Yeah, Peggle, I'm constantly restarting. Like, well,
Peggle.
that shot didn't go well. Gonna redo that.
I played the crap out of that when it first came to Android. So, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Mm-hmm. Game mobile phones? No.
No.
Host, please roll us back in. I think we're getting lost.
Jeez, I don't know what you guys would do without me. So,
Replace a battery?
what, on a shot collar? What? Anyway,
Oh, sorry.
I don't know, Mike. I don't know if I like what you said.
what was that, Don?
Yeah.
Can't understand you.
So anyway, the funny thing about restarting and resetting and doing all that stuff over is it leads to this mentality of I guess, like giving up on something, or and in video games, you're right, it's different because there's a mentality built in, and you don't really get that mindset that, oh, I'm giving up, and in role playing and stuff like that. To me, it seems like it's a little more permanent. If you're like, oh, we're just going to restart this whole thing, because even if you're only like second or third level, and you're like, I just don't like where this is going, we're just going to restart this and just take off from where we are. You still have met people and bought items, and I mean, there's still work involved to get back down to where you need to be to restart these things. And one tactic that's commonly used with game masters when they try to reset games or that kind of stuff is they do this implementation of time travel to just, oh, we're going to jump way back in the future, or we're going to jump way up into the future and hop in your DeLorean and off you go. But so we're going to talk as our discussion moves forward about the idea of time travel in not only role-playing games but video games, any of that kind of stuff, and what that does to a game, or what that adds to a game, or what that takes away from a game. So, anyone have any openers?
Well, I'm the one that kind of brought this this discussion topic.
Next.
Funny enough, well, there's kind of been an influx at the house, or re-influx, I guess it is for me. I just got into the Doctor Who series, and I have grown to become quite a big fan of it. As a matter of fact, our gaming closet has been themed after the TARDIS, and so many stories over the years, the Back to the Future movies, the Doctor Who series, and now video games are even utilizing it. The entire Assassin's Creed series is that, reliving memories and traveling back in time to deduce these mysteries that no one really know about, through different means. And I think in that case, I can see that it's if you're using it in such a way to continue a story. Like, we need to go back, because we do a lot of time jumping in the world of Pelegane, and we have multiple games running in different time periods throughout the timeline, but ultimately it's to explain this overarching story that from the creation of Pelegane to its destruction, there are these multiple stories going on. I think that that's a great way to utilize time travel, but utilizing time travel as, no, we don't like let's just turn it back time and start over. I wasn't quite sold on that.
How? Explain to me then. I mean, I obviously I know with like Dev's characters and stuff, and it has as they're jumping around the timelines in Pelegane. Then, kind of go into a little more depth as to how exactly that's working in the game. Obviously, you have to have some kind of explanation why Dev's character, who you've read about in the myths and legends of Pelegane, now shows up, and you're like, "What in the world is going on?" What does that add, or does that? Do you ever face any challenges with stuff like that?
I love one of the things that we did in the Dalfort game that we've mentioned, the long running game and so forth. It introduced me to the concept of the arcane weave, where the powers and so forth were weaved together, and you were pulling off of that weave, and all of the spellcasters would access this thing that ran between all things, whether it be elemental planes, between all the planes is a weave through the planes.
Kind of like the Force.
Right, much like that. Well, a character who kind of is present in all elements of time, is almost deific in nature, but it also provides that weave, the thread that ties everything together. Doctor Who, very much. You see the Doctor in many historical situations because the TARDIS feels he needs to be there. The time and place says he's supposed to be there and have some sort of impact on what's going on. Now, granted, his is also space-related and keeping aliens out of the human workings and so forth, but having a character such as Ziri, which was Deb's gnome lore oracle, now showing up in multiple games, or what was the one that's the not the angel, but the one who ended up staying in the Garden of Eden?
Oh, Ellie.
Ellie, okay.
Yeah,
another one. She popped up in another
Claire.
game, but it helps her and those of us to play the other games to kind of see that those other games are impacting what you're running right now. And they're from different time periods, whether it be from the future or whether it be from the past. That time travel element can also tie everything together. I think for me, though, more time travel is that we know this is going to happen. We need to go back and find out why. Was kind of where I was leaning more, but I guess I can see how time travel can provide that bonus as well, tying things together by such means. Don, you look like you have a thought.
Well, I do. I'm trying to figure out how to adequately express it.
Are you going to build off what I just said?
No.
Okay.
I didn't like what you had to say.
Strike it from the record.
That's right.
Flip the table.
I think that the element of time travel in direct relation with resetting a game, which is kind of where we started, we have experienced that before, and it can work well. I think that, especially when you have several new players join the game, and we played the game that I'm referring to for 6 years, and you have a lot of players that come in and out in that 6-year time frame. There were some very principled players that played as pretty much from the start to the finish, even if they weren't there for every game session. I myself am one of those. I got a chance to play pretty much from the genesis of the whole group dynamic, and then was able to finish the game out and end it with the entire group as well. But one of the more interesting things that we did was the game started to become overpowered for our GM, and she used the idea of she used the idea of time travel to not only reset her game, but to reset our reality, which is what I really appreciated about the idea of doing that. I don't think that resetting a game has to be resetting it from the word go. I think that resetting a game can very easily just be realigning how your characters look at the reality in front of them. Even if you start back at 1, you can still have the memories and the thoughts that you have had up to the point in which you reset. But in our case, we jumped 2,000 years into the future. So there were certain things that we had to do, and then all of a sudden, our old memories started to flash back into our brains, as well as the new memories we were creating 2,000 years later, and in how they related. I think that was a very dynamic point in our game to be able to relate those two truths. And I think that what I appreciated about that experience was, as a player, I had already been playing that character for 3 years, and then in jumping 2,000 years into the future, most of the people that I was associated with 2,000 years previous to that were no longer there. So it was like starting a brand new life with these characters that you had already been with for 3 years or more. And I really appreciated that aspect of kind of being able to start with a clean slate. And then, of course, later on, we started to get our memories back. We started to get a lot of our older powers back. And then we jumped back into time so that we can fix what the reason why we had jumped forward into time 2,000 years later, which I thought was kind of a cool twist. But I think that the idea of time travel in a game is really a cool aspect, because as a GM, you can pretty much customize it to however you wish. You can pretty much do what you want, and even if there are certain precedents set already in your game, you can tweak those things, and you can play with those numbers, and you can play with those realities when you're playing in a time-traveling style game, because reality is what you behold in front of you at that time. You know, your history books, and anybody who knows anything about history knows that history is always one-sided, and usually it's one-sided by the winner's side. The French and Indian War is known as the French and Indian War because the British won, and that's what they called it. The Revolutionary War is known as the Revolutionary War for the same reason. The Americans won it, and we were revolting against a tyrant, and that's why it's called the Revolutionary War for us. You know, and Britain had experienced revolutions in France and in other places as well, so to them it didn't really matter. But to us, when you say the Revolutionary War, people immediately think, oh, the 1770s to 1780s. You know, that is a specific time frame for us, but just because it says that Benjamin Franklin did this or that George Washington did this, if you had the opportunity, similar to being able to play in a game like Assassin's Creed 3 that is actually based on that same time frame, you get a chance to go back and actually see what could have happened. But then again, as a GM, you can pretty much make it whatever you feel like could have happened, and I really like that. And one thing that I'm a big sci-fi fan as far as movies and things like that. I don't read a lot of sci-fi books, but I'm probably one of the few people on Earth that can honestly say I like Star Wars and Star Trek almost equally. I really love both of them in their uniqueness, and I think that Star Trek has kind of, as a sci-fi science, or a sci-fi space genre, I should say, like a space opera style show, has touched more on time travel than pretty much any other American sci-fi show. Obviously, you've got Doctor Who in Britain, and there's probably tons of others that I can't think of or haven't seen before, but that really that or Quantum Leap. Those two shows really come, into the
Flashback.
forefront of my mind when I talk about when I think about time travel and seeing how things can change based on one little thing that you do. In Star Trek: First Contact, they went back in time because the Borg were attempting to destroy humanity, and so that was a really cool aspect of storytelling. But I really like the opportunity. Really, is what I'm trying to say. I really like the opportunity that time travel can bring, because you can put alternatives into what reality might say in a storybook. So that's kind of where I'm going.
Mike, aren't you a fan of alternate history stories?
Love them.
It's another element of it as well.
Well, I mean, of course. I mean, Donald kind of touched on it right there at the end, where you're talking about literally you have, what if the South won the Civil War? What if, what if? And ultimately, that's the question that drives a lot of game masters and gamers in general, is just what if. And it's this mentality that, you might, in Palagane, you might have a game that says, they're going to go and stop the city of Xeno Hollow from blowing up. Well, what happens if that takes place? What ripple effect does that happen? And then you start doing that whole, throw the rock in the pond and watch the ripples. And you get it right into that butterfly effect of you go back, you change something in history, and then a new arc spins off. And I mean, it's really at that point you've just created a whole new monster in your game, in your in the player's reality or whatever. Don, I saw you had something with.
Well, I was building off of what you were just talking about. I was trying to figure out. I couldn't remember exactly how I was linking Star Trek, other than just their time travel. But in the newest Star Trek movie, that's exactly what they do. All of a sudden, Kirk, instead of having a father in his life, his father dies in a starship battle. Totally different reality. Spock is raised in a totally different way, and their characters are thus affected in that way, and their relationship is strenuous. Whereas in the original series, there was tension there, but I mean, very rarely did you see Captain Kirk and Captain Spock just haul off and try and punch each other. I mean, that wasn't a reality then, because they were tight. And Back to the Future, the second Back to the Future.
My personal favorite.
I really like that one too. But that it directly relates to that concept, because there's a book that they get that has like a bunch of gambling stats on it, and then
scores to
scores to
sporting events.
The sports
events.
almanac.
Yep.
That's right.
Yep.
And Biff finds it, and he gets into the time machine. He takes it back to his younger self, and then all of a sudden, just because of that one thing, because of him handing them that book, the entire reality of the future drastically changed. And I mean, it was almost post-apocalyptic to where, obviously 1985, which I think that one was made in like 87 or something, like a couple years later. But I think that having that alternative history and that alternate timeline in reality is a lot of fun to play with, because, like I said, you can make it whatever you want.
Absolutely.
Katie,
ladies,
I'm just saying.
Well, I was going to go with, speaking of the new Star Trek, which I absolutely loved, when old Spock talks to Kirk, he implies the idea that if, old Spock and new Spock see each other or talk at all, it's going to be, some horrific cataclysm, some kind of awful paradox that just rips the universe in half. So when you're being a GM or something like that, do you ever worry about any kind of paradox? You just pretty much just go with it when you're doing the time travel. I mean, do you have to try and keep people from, like, maybe as Marty McFly did, almost undoing himself, like to where, his parents don't ever get together and he's not born? Or if his parents do get together, is he still there in that time stream, but not in his time stream that he originated from? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that a...
It's probably the weirdest thing in the world to talk to your other character. Not talk to yourself. I haven't talked to myself in a different timeline yet. Like, my personal character, I haven't talked to an older version or younger version of them yet. But I have talked to myself as another character from the past, and that can be an experience when you're trying to play two characters at once.
Yeah.
You need some Jeff Dunham skills, I think, when he plays as multiple characters in his head. And
well, I think I don't know if there's ever been a video game developed that has handled the paradox thing that you were talking about very well. I cannot think of one that is, you're trying to avoid, changing too much in order to drastically change the future or whatever. But I know when we played in role-playing games, we were, I guess we were never just confronted with the fact that the things we would go back and change had such drastic effects. Now, we just wrapped up a game, the little one-shot game that we played was, I think it's probably the best inclination of that, when the party literally went through this campaign. There's a black hourglass that's filled with sand, and essentially the world is coming to an end, and everywhere they see this hourglass is empty on the top, and the sand is all fallen to the bottom. And so as the game progresses, they're all like, oh, well, this hourglass, and it's got to be important. We keep seeing it everywhere, and yada, 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 whatnot. After the game is over, and the people in the campaign, they actually die at the end of the game, and which was also a neat thing, because most of us had never gone to the point where our characters were literally dying and not faced with their own mortality, which is a topic for another time. Mm-hmm. But they were essentially alerted or awakened to a reality where they were watching what had happened. So, like, they were localized wherever this fight was, and as they were dying, their souls were removed and thrown somewhere else in the world where they could see a bigger picture as to what is going on. So, like, Josh's character, wherever he ended up, he could see a larger picture as to what in the world is going on in Pallegane at that exact moment of what's going on. Well, as it all wraps together, they are then, I guess, transferred to what looks like a dark room with a bed and a little, funny you should mention Ziri, but a little gnome laying on the bed sleeping. It looks like she's dreaming. And essentially, they are essentially clued into the fact that she is dreaming what they just lived. And as Ziri, Deb's character, as she wakes up, one of the gods from the world shows up in her room and literally just looks at her and takes this hourglass and places it on her bed and then flips it over, and the first piece of sand drops into the bottom of the... So, it's not necessarily like the whole, if you step on that dandelion, you're going to make ripples and waves that are going to kill everybody.
Like chaos theory stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's very much, you saw the end. Now you have to figure out how in the world you're going to fix it before it becomes that. So it's kind of like a reverse mentality.
I think Don's game that he's getting ready to run is this idea of parallel stories, completely different parties, but parallel stories are going on during the same time period. And I think we're gonna start to see the idea of games impacting the other game. I think we're gonna see it more often than we have so far, which I'm really excited about, because I'm sure we're gonna have our gaming stories outside of which. We got to really focus on not metagaming and that type of thing. But I'm sure we're going to have these conversations. Just as an example, one of our newest players is a lightweight who's also a drunkard, which I think is hilarious. But that's just an idea. I can't wait to see how that plays out. And she's not even in the same game we're playing in. But I'm very curious to see if maybe, because one of the little module ideas I have was very similar to this Xenopolis idea, is to actually run a 3 or 4 part thing where they go in search of the city of Xenopolis, and maybe try and find out either A, restoring it, or B, trying to go back to prevent it. What type of effect would that have? We've got to talk with, of course, the game master behind all of Pallegane and find out. But you're right, video games aren't taking...
we know that, guys.
Right. But you're right, not very many video games try and take that approach yet.
I think there's one that I know of and you are like a soldier from the future that is essentially thrown back into time throughout these historical events, and your job is to, be there and be the one that eliminates Hitler and you're doing all these things that are trying to prevent all those huge catastrophic events from happening. And so it wasn't very popular. It didn't do very well, but I remember now that I have talked about some of this, it's kind of came to me, and I don't even remember the name of the game.
So if someone knows, please post on Facebook.
Right.
Deb? Anything?
Yeah, too much. So I'm kind of over here, kind of percolating.
That's what that smell is.
Exactly.
I was waiting for the high-pitched sound. Yeah. That's tea, not coffee.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I'm going to go back to the first topic, and then I'm going to come back to where we are. So in regards to restart versus just end and be done with it, one of my issues with the idea of restarting, especially if you're restarting with the same character, which is what happened in regards to the game that you all played. The same character, you were just at an earlier point, you were back at first level as opposed to the high level you were at, is, in my mind, when I have a character, she has done these things, whatever that long list of things is. And then when you let's say I get up to, something ridiculous 20-ish level, and then I'm tossed back and I'm on first or second level, I will get confused of figuring out which one is this. Hold on. I did that at 5th. I did that. Hold on. Because if you've already played one up to 25th level and now you're at, say, 12th level on your restart, which time frame am I in now? And I'll start, and I'll stop and kind of have to reevaluate. I can see myself wanting to do that, and that would be a problem because now I'm confusing everybody because I'm saying, no, really, we fought that dragon at 6th. No, you didn't. And so the confusion aspect. So then coming over into the time travel idea, for a GM to handle time travel in a role-playing game could potentially be very tough. And the reason I'm thinking, I love Star Trek. I am more of a Trekkie than I am a Star Wars fan. I like Star Wars, but I love Star Trek. And I love when they do time travel episodes. The last episode in the Star Trek The Next Generation series, All Good Things, is actually one of my favorites. And one of the final scenes of the whole thing is when all 3 Enterprises with all 3 Jean-Luc Picards, who's rapidly jumping between 3 time periods, all meet kind of in the middle, and it's this huge paradox and quantum fluxes and everything going crazy. But to be able to describe that and explain that, I have not met a GM that's really, really good at it. Derek is the best one. Our current GM is the best one that I've ever seen to be able to keep track of that. But I still find myself really confused. And my husband can tell you occasionally, I'm like, no, wait, hold on. What time are we in now? All right, are we before or after Xenopolis fell? Okay, we're after, but not far. And I'll do that because we've played in so many different time periods. I've played the same character now in multiple time frames because she's a half elf, or she's full elf now. Anyway, whatever. Very long-lived character. I will get confused. And so, as a player, I've never been a GM, but as a player, I find myself getting very frustrated sometimes, not with the game, but because there's so much that's gone on and so much in my head, and I'm trying to figure out where I am and how do I not metagame because, wait a minute, I played Lindariel 100 years later, but she doesn't know that, so she's here, so what choice would she make here? I can find that being very burdensome sometimes, especially if you have one character that's doing this. Ziri has the potential to be in the same boat, sadly. Adore Ziri. But now it seems like Derek's going to throw me into the same puddle with her.
But the issue with Ziri is she's a knowledge master, so there's not going to be much that she's not going to know.
True. It's Deb that's having the issues. Ziri, I think, can handle it just fine. Ziri's a genius.
I agree.
But maybe not so much on Deb and the whole handling of, okay, what point is Ziri in this story? Wait a minute. Was all that really a dream in her head? Was she having a vision? What happened? And I was trying to pull Derek when we had that moment and flipped it over. I'm like, so what really happened? Was all of that in her head? Did it really happen? Is she time jumping? Did she get a vision from one of the deities? What was it? And he really didn't give me much to work with. And stab him with a pencil. Like, what do I do with this? So it's very fun, but it has the potential, I think, to get a little out of control. And keeping it controlled enough that people are having a good time and not getting frustrated, confused, wanting to stab somebody. So that's all I got.
Well, we can't have people stabbing each other. That would be detrimental to our gaming group.
Absolutely, it would be.
True.
And we're just getting a good hold now of people.
I'm just saying. So, what do you think about, if you're doing time travel and you're doing that kind of stuff, do you think that, obviously with whatever limited experience that you guys have with Derek and what we'd have with Danielle, Don was saying that there's a really good place for that in campaigns to kind of develop some things. Do you see that as a overall? Do you see it as a positive GM tool, or do you see it as kind of like a stunt? Like this is something that you're, maybe you do in a couple of sessions, or because Danielle's base was the whole reset of the campaign. It was you're going ahead 2,000 years, and you're going to be. And you're going to be first level again, but again, it was literally, your characters are essentially starting over, but you have some memories of what you've done. Mm-hmm. So is it something that's openly accepted, or again, is it just like a stunt that is being pulled?
Well, I think that there are two ways to use time travel in any form of, entertainment, whether it be books, movies, gaming, anything like that. And it's using it as a plot device, like Doctor Who does. It's, something that's integral, or using it as a crutch. So if you're using time travel, I don't think it should be, like, as you said, like a stunt. I mean, it depends on whoever's running it. I think it can be a really, really great tool as long as the GM isn't using it as a end-all be-all, like, magical elixir to fix everything. If it's something that furthers the game and the story and brings, something more interesting to it, then I think that's great. But if you're just using it as, like, well, I just want to not do this stuff because I don't like it, then I think that it's not something that's going to bring anything to your game at all.
And I think the advantage with the way Danielle handled it is that though we did do a reset, because that was a very different form of reset, we did a reset, but the story continued forward. And within a couple of levels, we regained all our memories and started to gain some of our old abilities back. But by jumping us forward in time, we got to see a long-lasting effect from what happening by us dying.
Exactly.
So ultimately, we had to figure out how to get back to our time period to prevent that from happening, which is ultimately what makes it. Well, what made it work pretty well. I will say that. I am not, as I said earlier, in role-playing games, I'm not a fan of starting over from scratch. But we didn't really. We started at first level, but the story kept going, which meant we still had our same characters. We were still the same people as characters may have been, but we just weren't as powerful. I don't mind that. I can work around that. But that's just because I'm used to it. But I can understand the concern that would come there. I think that was a very interesting way to use time travel. And, again, using time travel as a way to solve mysteries, much like Doctor Who did, and in role-playing games, or Doctor Who does. He's still in the air. I don't want to scare any of those.
Don't you jinx it.
I'm not trying to. But using that as a way to solve mysteries as things went down, or to gather the information needed before an event goes down, I think could be a really good use.
I was just going to wrap up what you were kind of saying, then we'll go see what you had there, Don. But another thing that was really what made that plot hook that Danielle used really interesting to me is she had us, when we reset, we were allowed to take classes that we weren't taking originally. So, I was a epic level sorcerer. I was, pretty much the party artillery. And when we reset, Don and I decided that we were going to go cleric. So as we leveled up in this reset, we were leveling up as a divine caster. And then when we got all of our power back, we literally became an epic level divine caster and an epic level arcane caster, which it was a really neat concept to extremely overpowered, but really neat concept. The fact that you had this chance to go back.
Longest battles ever.
I agree. Yeah. To go back and literally say, okay, though I have much of the same memories, I'm going to take a different approach as to how I solve these problems. And it was neat to have that ability to go back and say, okay, yeah, I might have been this epic rogue that does lots of stabby, steely, but I'm going to go be a barbarian this time or something. And then when you come back together, now you're a ragey, stabby, breaky, steely.
Wouldn't that be horrible to rage and do sneak attack? That would just...
That'd be pretty awesome. I'm just saying. Donald?
I kind of like where you guys were going with the idea of being able to like solve problems and things like that. And I made a comment earlier about a show that was on, I believe, during the late 80s, maybe early 90s, but Quantum Leap was a show that it was about Sam, the main character, and he had basically kind of a not a mentor per se, but a guy who walked around basically with their time traveling device, and every time they went to a new time, you couldn't see his friend, but Sam was always a different person. And basically what I was going to bring up with that is kind of a different mindset or a different aspect of time travel is not just time traveling, but also either like traveling within dimensions of time. So like not only are you traveling back to the 1800s, but now all of a sudden you're traveling back to the 1800s with Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter. You know what I mean? Like something like that. Something that is a lot more, again, alternate history, but more of a sci-fi twist than just it being what if the South won? Well, what if the South won because they were a horde of zombies, or you know what I mean? Like what if they were all being controlled by some crazy necromancer or something like that? And I always really liked that kind of a spin and kind of a twist, and I really get into that kind of stuff in general anyway, which I've talked about on previous episodes and stuff. But I really like it when somebody takes something that is the stereotype and kind of turns it on its ear and kind of makes it their own original play on the things that they are doing. And just the idea of I was also thinking there was a fun concept I came up with not too long ago about the idea of creating two different characters for a game and having one of them be some adventure class from Pathfinder or D&D or whatever it may be, and then having a totally different character that was more of like a commoner build or like a simpleton, just regular person. And one game session or two game sessions you play this adventurer, and then the party decides, hey, I think it's time to go to the inn and rest and, you know, cash in our chips and just have a night out on the town. You guys go to sleep, and when you wake up, you're a bunch of mundane people in the modern world. And it's a constant struggle on trying to figure out which of you is the real you and which of you is in the real time, in the real space, in the real dimension, you know, and constantly having the memories for both personalities in both worlds. So when you wake up as your dwarf barbarian, you're looking at yourself going, wait a minute, where am I? You know what I mean? And then you kind of look in the mirror and you go, oh, was that just a dream? You know what I mean? What's going on? And having conflicts that mirror each other in both worlds. You know, maybe you've got a bully, maybe you're playing a high school timeline, and you have a bully that's messing with you who plays on the football team, and then when you go to sleep that night, then your other side wakes up, and now you're fighting against a horde of orc who are trying to usurp the power of some mayor because they want to take this city back that was theirs 300 years ago. You know, and kind of mirroring conflicts, but not the same. And it's not exactly time travel, but it's kind of that aspect of having a reality and then.
It's like a parallel reality.
Exactly. Having like parallel realities and having them not only be distant in time, but also in space and in dimension and in reality. I think that's kind of a fun concept for me, is being able to kind of play with stuff like that.
Temporal analysis and the different parallel universes and so forth.
Yeah.
The multiverse theory, as that may be.
Right.
Wasn't there a TV show or something you were watching?
It was called Awake.
Yeah, same thing.
And it's about a guy who gets in a car accident, and when he wakes up, his wife is alive, and his son had died, and he is talking to this therapist about this whole thing, and then he goes to sleep, and he wakes up, and his son is alive, and his wife is dead. So he's literally living this paradox of where one reality, he has this green wristband that he tied on his wrist on one of them, so he could, when he wakes up, he knows which one he's in. But as the series moves further forward, they start kind of crashing and merging together, and he never really realizes what happens. And without ruining the show, I won't go any further into what's going on there. But it's exactly what you're saying. Like, in one reality, he'll see, he was a cop, and he'll be solving this murder, and this murder happened in front of building, 231, and then in his other reality, something's going to happen, and 231 is important, and he doesn't know why, he doesn't know what, but he's catching, like, tail signs that are running between the two. Mm-hmm. So, like, the story is arcing between the two realities,
right?
And he's just literally jumping from story to story, trying to figure out what's important and what's not important. And it's neat because he learned stuff about his son in one reality where he's alive and he's talking to him. It's just him and his son that he never knew, about his son. And then he's over here with his wife, and they're like selling their house and moving to Oregon. And whole different
reality.
Yeah. But
That's cool.
it's really neat. But what I was going to say was there's lots of implements of time travel that kind of bridge between gaming to just entertainment. I remember a TV series that was on when I was younger called Early Edition.
I love
that one. Loved Early Edition.
And that's not necessarily time travel.
It's
like the guy. I'm getting there.
Sorry,
awesome cat.
Josh has a confused look on his face.
Okay.
Edition, Josh?
The guy didn't go into the future or back into the future or whatever, but he was always delivered tomorrow's newspaper. So
with
he could
tomorrow's headlines.
Yeah, he could look at the newspaper and see that this lady is hit by a car or whatever, so he could go and stop those things.
I think I do remember hearing about it now that you explain it, but I just don't remember
It was a
seeing
good show.
it. Yeah.
I watched a few of the episodes.
Yeah, and
that
and
cat
the
was
cat
awesome. Meow, boom, and that's like The cat, which we always try to figure out was like an angel or was it, what was the cat, because he was so cool.
It's another interesting tool to be used for time travel. So again, I don't know if we've actually answered if time travel is a positive spin or if it's something that could potentially be destructive, as Deb claims that she pulls her hair out because things are just darn confusing. Trying to keep your characters in line as to what you're doing. Yes, Deborah?
Well, I was actually going to say, I think my own personal experience might mirror some characters
Alternate
in
reality.
certain movies of if you have all of these, like, for example, Once Upon a Time. Sorry, I had to say it. Where they have, at this point in the show, they have both of their existences in their brains together. And, for example, the Mad Hatter had that before, and it was driving him insane because the discontinuity between the two, and how does he live as both, and yet he's really neither, and that confusion. But if Deb experiences that, actually I'm having kind of a moment. In that case, why could I not put that over a little bit into the characters themselves, who have experienced multiple time periods, multiple adventures, multiple party members, things keep changing, and that's probably not easy on them either. Now, Ziri probably had an easier time because she's genius, but Lindariel, that probably would be a little disconcerting. I'm trying to keep doing my thing here, but good grief, I've been through a lot, and where am I now? And having moments of that probably would lend a flavor of reality to it.
Obviously, if your character is going years and years and years and years, even between choreographed adventures,
right?
You do things. You don't just go on hold and just wait for the next adventuring party to show up,
right?
So yeah, I could see that. I think I was here. I can't remember when I was here, but I remember that weren't you replacing this roof or something at one point in time? I mean,
yes.
You start having these memories, these latent memories of being there hundreds of years before, or whatever, or maybe hundreds of years in the future, and you're like, wasn't this place like smashed like to the ground?
Yeah, last time I was here, I was being overrun by a horde of goblins. So wait a second, what happened?
Right,
and that would actually be some fun stuff to throw in.
Donald?
I was reminded by both of your comments about a thought that I had about instead of and I keep coming up with these really what I think are really fun game concepts. They might not be, but instead of the idea of time travel, I think it would be really fun to have personal bias aside or personal ideology aside, a game based on reincarnation and how everyone who's playing in the game is a reincarnated aspect of a previous character that someone has played, even if it's not the same. If Josh made a character, but it was the reincarnated soul of a character Debbie played previous, how that would affect that person's mentality and that person's memories and that person's actions. I think that would be a really fun, kind of a really fun twist on the concept of time travel and things like that.
I think there's a movie that just came out, Tom Hanks and Halle Berry, called Cloud Atlas. Isn't that like the whole concept of the movie?
Yeah, throughout the movie, I think they have. I went and saw it the weekend it came out, and it's amazing. If anybody's wondering,
Okay.
They have I think like 5 main actors who play every single role, and I think the earliest one's like the 1800s, and the latest one is you don't know how far into the future, but it's like after technology and humanity has just reached its pinnacle and then completely crashed, and it's like I think like 100 or 200 years after the fall of humanity, and it's really cool because you can see how the characters in each timeline affect the ones before and after them.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yes, I agree. So, are we all kind of at an understanding of time travel? I think it's...
It's too far in the future to tell.
Is it?
Wow.
True understanding of time travel. Yeah, I think it's too far in the future to tell.
You need some help from Doc Brown?
Probably.
I figured you would.
Great Scott!
So as we wrap up on the show, Josh, you killed me. As we wrap up on the show, last episode we established rather you are a slave to the slide and unlock or a master of the drag and drop. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility. So choose hero or villain in your gaming group. This time I'm going to establish that sticks and stones may break your bones, but time travel will never hurt you. So, thanks for joining us. Hope you had a good time.
Please visit us at www.theestablishedfacts.com and our Facebook page, facebook.com/theestablishedfacts. If you would like to support us by buying some merchandise, visit cafepress.com/castingrobot.
Bonus